If you run out of money today, you just pull out your phone, scan a QR code, and you're done. At most, you make a bank transfer or borrow a little cash from a friend through a text message. But if you were suddenly pulled back tens of thousands of years, standing in the middle of a prehistoric marketplace, everything would be completely different. You want to trade for a razor-sharp stone knife to go hunting. But in your pocket, you don't have a single gold coin, a paper bill, or anything resembling what we call money today. All you have are a few hundred seashells, or worse, you have to drag along a stone slab the size of a truck tire. It sounds absurd, but that is exactly what our ancestors once lived through. No polymer notes, no gold or silver, and certainly no Bitcoin. And yet humans still traded, still exchanged goods, still built entire complex economies. They used forms of money so strange you probably won't believe it. Some currencies were as small as a grain of rice. Others weighed so much that nobody in their right mind would even try to steal one, because they simply couldn't lift it. Over the next 20 minutes, we're going to unpack the wildest monetary system in human history. You'll learn why entire islands once used 5-ton stones to buy and sell goods. You'll discover why the word salary in English traces back to a common ingredient sitting in your kitchen right now. And most importantly, you'll understand why, even today, with digital wallets everywhere, so many of us still prefer holding a stack of cash rather than watching numbers change on a screen. The answer is buried deep in a brain that has been evolving for tens of thousands of years. Think about how many different objects you touch in a single day that all serve the exact same purpose money once served. A coin for a vending machine, a punch card at your favorite coffee shop, even loyalty points on an app. Every single one of those is a tiny descendant of a much older, much stranger family of money. And by the end of this video, you'll probably never look at your own wallet the same way again. So get ready, because our journey through the Stone Age marketplace is about to begin. Many of us grew up with a very simple picture of prehistoric trade. Two cavemen standing face to face, one holding a chicken, the other holding a bunch of bananas, happily swapping goods and walking away satisfied. This method is called bartering, a direct exchange of goods. It sounds logical, it sounds simple, and yes, this method really did exist. But the harsh truth is that bartering has one massive flaw, something economists call the double coincidence of wants. That sounds academic, but it's actually easy to understand. Say you have a chicken and you want to trade it for a sharp stone axe. You find the toolmaker in your tribe, but as luck would have it, he has no interest in chicken at all. All he wants is an animal hide to sew a coat for the coming winter. So your transaction grinds to a complete halt right there. You now have to find a third person who owns an animal hide, trade your chicken for the hide first, then trade the hide for the axe. That already sounds exhausting, and this is just for a single item. In a marketplace with dozens or hundreds of different goods, this double coincidence of wants problem becomes nearly impossible to solve on a constant basis. On top of that, some goods like chickens or fish can't be divided, can't be stored for long, and their value is hard to agree on between different tribes. Because this chaotic and unstable trading system caused so much friction, prehistoric people had no choice but to invent something smarter. They needed a middleman, a unit of value that everyone would trust and accept, so they wouldn't have to keep trading back and forth endlessly. And so, the very first currencies in human history were born, taking on some of the strangest shapes you could ever imagine. Anyone who wanted to survive and trade smoothly in that society basically had to memorize an unwritten exchange rate table, that the entire community agreed upon. Archaeologists studying ancient trade routes have actually found evidence that pure barter, without any kind of intermediary object, was far rarer among prehistoric societies than popular culture likes to imagine. Most early communities, even ones with very simple technology, quickly stumbled onto some form of shared token, long before anyone wrote down a single rule about economics. That instinct to create a middleman for trade turns out to be almost universal, appearing again and again across completely unconnected civilizations on opposite sides of the planet. One of the most widespread and long-lasting currencies in human history was the cowrie shell. These small shells have a glossy, curved shape, and they're notoriously difficult to counterfeit. They're also extremely durable, barely degrading over time, and light enough to carry around easily, making them perfect for everyday trade. But the most important reason cowrie shells became currency was scarcity. These shells only appeared in certain coastal regions, mainly around the Indian Ocean and other tropical waters. For tribes living deep inland, hundreds of kilometers from the coast, owning cowrie shells was practically a luxury. That scarcity is exactly what created value, the same principle that makes gold valuable because of its limited supply on Earth. Cowrie shells eventually spread across Africa, across Asia, and even reached parts of the Americas, becoming one of the longest-lasting and most widely used currencies in human history. But the story doesn't end there. At some point, certain inland tribes found routes to the open sea or established trade links with coastal communities. They began collecting massive quantities of shells and flooding them into the local market. And what happened next was inevitable. When the supply of shells suddenly spiked, their value crashed almost overnight. This is exactly what modern economists call inflation, and it's likely one of the earliest recorded inflation events in human history, long before anyone had ever heard of a central bank or monetary policy. Stories say that at one point, just 5 shells could buy you a plump rabbit. But not long after, once shells flooded the market, buyers had to haul an entire sack of shells just to trade for a small bundle of wild greens. The purchasing power of shell money kept eroding over time, exactly the way a paper bill loses value when a bank prints too much of it. This is a fascinating economic lesson, showing that even without schools or textbooks on economics, prehistoric humans experienced and stumbled through the most basic laws of supply and demand on their own. Shells taught our ancestors a hard lesson, that anything used as money, if its supply isn't controlled, will eventually lose its value. Historians who study West African and Pacific trade networks have found records showing that some rulers actually tried to regulate the flow of cowrie shells into their territory, almost like an ancient version of a central bank trying to manage the money supply. Some communities even developed different grades of shells, where slightly larger or more perfectly shaped cowries were worth noticeably more than smaller, chipped ones, creating an early and surprisingly sophisticated system of currency valuation. It's a striking reminder that the instinct to protect the value of money and the temptation to exploit it are both far older than most of us ever imagined. If you thought shells were strange, wait until you hear about the island of Yap. This is a small island located in the Pacific Ocean, part of what is now Micronesia. Here, the local people invented a currency that still stuns the modern world: giant stone discs called rye stones. These stones were carved into circular shapes, with a large hole in the center, and their size is honestly no joke. Some rye stones were as small as a dinner plate, but others were massive, reaching nearly 4 meters in diameter and weighing several tons, roughly the same weight as a fully grown elephant. So the obvious question is, how could anyone possibly carry a multi-ton slab of stone around to buy and sell things every day? The answer stunned many modern economists, and it's simply that they never moved the stone at all. When two people made a transaction, say someone wanted to buy a pig or a piece of land, they would use a rye stone as payment. But instead of hauling it anywhere, they simply announced publicly in front of the entire community that the large stone sitting at the edge of the village now belonged to the buyer. The stone stayed exactly where it was, sometimes for decades, even centuries, while only the ownership, recognized collectively by the whole community, changed hands. Does that sound familiar? This is essentially the exact principle behind modern blockchain technology, where every transaction is recorded publicly and transparently, except instead of a distributed computer network, the people of Yap stored that information in the collective memory of their community. There's even a famous story recorded in accounts of Yap Island about a massive rye stone that fell into the ocean while being transported by canoe from another island. Interestingly, even though the stone sat at the bottom of the sea, invisible and untouchable, the entire community still recognized its value and still counted it as part of the owner's wealth, simply because everyone knew it was there. The value of each rye stone depended not just on its size, but also on the story behind it. A stone that had been transported across a long, dangerous journey, one that cost several lives during mining and transport, was worth far more than a similar stone that had been quarried easily nearby. This shows that, even in prehistoric times, humans already grasped a crucial concept in modern economics, that the value of a currency isn't just physical. It's rooted in the trust and shared recognition of an entire community. This is the very same principle underlying the paper money we use today, and even digital currencies like Bitcoin. In fact, several economists have written about the Yap stone system almost as a real-world thought experiment for understanding modern money. A famous story tells of German colonial administrators who once tried to punish uncooperative villages by painting a black cross on their largest rye stones to mark them as confiscated. The villagers never lost physical access to the stones. They simply stopped being wealthy in the eyes of the community, and reportedly worked hard to have the marks removed, proving once again that value here was entirely a matter of shared belief rather than possession. It's a strange, almost poetic reminder that money in any era is really just a story a group of people agree to believe together. If shells and rye stones already surprised you, the next currency is even more unusual, because it's the only one on this list you could actually eat. That currency is salt. In many prehistoric regions, and later in ancient civilizations, salt was considered one of the most precious commodities of all, because it served an absolutely essential function for human survival. Salt preserves meat and fish, keeping them from rotting, which was especially crucial during harsh winters when hunting became far more difficult. With no refrigerators, no freezing technology, salt was essentially the only refrigerator available to ancient humans. Because of this life or death importance, salt gradually became a widely accepted currency across many ancient civilizations, particularly around the Mediterranean and parts of Africa. Here's a fascinating detail that not many people know: a connection between salt and the modern language we still use every single day. The English word salary actually comes from the Latin word sal, which means salt. In ancient Rome, soldiers and certain officials were sometimes paid in salt, or given an allowance called a salarium, meaning a stipend to buy salt. From there, the concept of salary gradually took shape and became the word we still use for wages today. In other words, every time you get paid at the end of the month, You're unknowingly echoing a tradition thousands of years old, from a time when our ancestors were paid in blocks of pure white salt. Salt wasn't just used for wages, it was also traded for weapons, for livestock, and even played a central role in wedding ceremonies across many ancient cultures. In certain regions of Africa, salt was cast into standardized blocks with fixed sizes and weights, almost like the gold bars you'd see in a treasure hunting movie. This shows that ancient humans developed the concept of standardizing currency units surprisingly early, ensuring fairness and transparency in trade. Beyond shells, stone, and salt, human history recorded countless other bizarre forms of currency. On the Solomon Islands, people once used the feathers of a rare bird, woven into long coils, as objects of exchange during important ceremonies. In Fiji, whale teeth were considered extremely valuable, reserved only for major occasions like weddings or peace negotiations between tribes. In ancient Central America, the Aztecs treated cacao beans as genuine currency, so valuable that historians even recorded cases of counterfeit cacao beans, stuffed with clay on the inside, an early form of counterfeit money in human history. Even in ancient Rome, the word pecunia, meaning money in Latin, comes from pecus, meaning cattle, showing that before metal coins existed, livestock, cows, and sheep were the true measure of a family's wealth. In parts of ancient China, small bronze objects shaped like tiny knives and spades were used as currency long before round coins became standard, showing that even metal money started out imitating the tools people actually needed in daily life. In medieval and early modern Russia, blocks of pressed tea were sometimes used as a form of currency in regions far from any mint, valuable both because they could be traded and because, in a pinch, they could simply be brewed and consumed. Even something as ordinary as cattle shows up again and again across cultures, from ancient Rome to parts of East Africa, where the number of cows a family owned was, quite literally, their bank balance. All of these examples point to one striking truth, that no matter which civilization, separated by thousands of kilometers with zero contact between them, humans kept independently arriving at similar solutions to the exact same problem: how to exchange value fairly and efficiently. After all these stories about shells, rye stones, and salt, let's circle back to the question we started with. Why, even in this digital age, when most of our transactions are just numbers changing on a phone screen, do so many of us still feel more secure holding a stack of cash, or owning gold, property, or other tangible assets we can see and touch? The answer lies deep in the evolutionary wiring of the human brain. For tens of thousands of years, our ancestors grew accustomed to measuring value through physical, tangible objects. A massive rye stone standing proudly in the middle of the village, a glittering pile of shells, or a block of pure white salt. All of these were things you could see, touch, and feel confident actually existed. Our brains are wired to trust what is tangible far more than abstract concepts. That's exactly why, despite huge advances in financial technology, many people still feel anxious when their entire wealth exists only as numbers inside a banking app. This also explains why gold, even though it's no longer official currency in most countries, is still seen as a safe haven every time the global economy gets shaky. It's not just about economic value, it's about that primal sense of security that comes from owning something physically real, something that can't simply vanish because of a system glitch or an accidental click. Looking back at the entire journey, from shells to rye stones to salt, and eventually to metal coins, paper money, and today's digital wallets, we can see one consistent pattern running through it all. Currency, in any form, has never simply been about the physical material itself. Its real value has always rested on trust, on the shared agreement of an entire community that this particular thing holds value and can be exchanged. A rye stone sitting at the bottom of the ocean still held value because everyone believed it did. The paper bill in your wallet is really just a printed piece of paper, but it holds value because an entire economic and legal system stands behind it to guarantee that value. And even digital currencies like Bitcoin today are, at their core, running on the exact same principle the people of Yap Island applied hundreds of years ago, a shared ledger recognized by the entire community, one that no single person can alter on their own. Modern behavioral economists actually have a name for this deep-seated preference for physical assets. They call it the endowment effect, the tendency for people to value something more highly simply because they can hold it and call it their own. You can see this effect everywhere in daily life, from people hoarding cash under the mattress despite modern banking, to collectors who insist on physical trading cards even though a digital version would be far more convenient to store. None of that is irrational. It's simply our ancient wiring showing through. A survival instinct once tied to protecting real resources like food and shelter, now quietly shaping how we feel about digital numbers on a screen. You could say that our Stone Age ancestors, without ever knowing a single concept of economics or blockchain technology, unknowingly laid the groundwork for the entire financial system we rely on today. So the next time your phone flashes insufficient balance, take a moment to feel a little better about it. At least you don't have to dive to the bottom of the ocean to retrieve a 2-ton stone just to pay for a cup of bubble tea. You don't have to gather hundreds of seashells or carry around a block of salt just to buy lunch. The journey from those strange prehistoric currencies to the digital wallet sitting in your pocket today is a long and remarkable story of human creativity that never stopped evolving. To honor the ancestors who endured all those chaotic monetary systems so we could enjoy the convenience we have today, take a moment to hit like on this video. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you don't miss the next fascinating story from history. And especially, leave a comment below and try converting your current bank balance into seashells just to see how rich you'd be by prehistoric standards. Thanks for watching, and see you in the next video.